Eggs, the podcast, where we bring you the best and brightest minds in business, tech, and beyond. Our guest today is Karthik Suresh, co-founder of Ignition, a go-to-market platform that has helped hundreds of startups launch and scale successful products. Karthik has more than a decade of experience in product management and entrepreneurship, and has worked with companies ranging from early-stage startups to the Fortune 500. He's also a frequent speaker and writer on topics related to product management, and has been featured in publications like Forbes, TechCrunch, and the Wall Street Journal. In today's episode, we'll be diving deep into the world of product management and startup growth. From securing venture funding to navigating the latest trends in tech, Karthik has seen it all and is ready to share his insights with us. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a weathered professional, there is always something new to learn, so join us now in learning from the best in the business. Please join us in welcoming to the show, Karthik Suresh. Hey, Karthik, how are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show. Excited.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on and making time for us. This is awesome.
Of course.
So let's take a step back in the Wayback Machine and talk about your first tech role. You went to business college in London. How did that translate into a tech career?
Yeah, it's been a long journey. So I have a tech background actually. So I have a degree in computer science, and I started my career in high frequency and algo trading in New York. Did it for about 7 years. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with financial services. Then I went to business school to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And then after business school, I discovered startups and tech, and I joined Kraft as a second employee. Kraft is now a Series B company. It's an enterprise intelligence company in San Francisco. So the whole company moved from London to San Francisco. So I moved with the company. So that's why I ended up in the Bay Area. And then joined Facebook as a product manager because I wanted to see how products are built at a larger scale. And then I'm like, okay, now I want to do my own thing. So I'm building Ignition, which is basically a platform to manage all your go-to-market plans. So it's been quite a journey from financial services in Wall Street to the Silicon Valley. But yeah, excited to talk more about all of these.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of topics in there, obviously, right? And I think we've got kind of a lot of ground to cover. So I'm not sure where to start, except for maybe with some definitions. So, I think some of the language that we use is really common in startup communities, but for maybe more traditional type small businesses, things like that, maybe they don't know about things like go-to-market and things like that. So do you mind sort of outlining what a go-to-market plan is and how a platform like yours might help facilitate it?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a story about like how we started Ignition and how the go-to-market platform came about, and then I jumped right into the go-to-market plan to give you context. So while I was at Facebook, I was launching all of these devices. There's Facebook Reality Labs is the division of Facebook where you have Oculus and Portal and like a bunch of other devices. So it's a hardware division. And when we are launching any of the products, the spreadsheet which was used to manage the product launch had 100 tabs, and there was a tab to keep track of different tabs, and nobody knew where the latest assets or collateral or anything was. And the way they used to solve it was a bunch of project managers would jump on like a war room call with 100 people, and they would say, hey, is this done? Is this done? Is this done? Like go through a checklist. And that's how it's like there has to be a better way of managing launches. So that's how Ignition was born. And the other thing is like, whenever you do a product launch, it's almost like you do a launch and you just go party because every launch is a success, right? I mean, there's no accountability. There's not much of a retro on how the launches did. So I was like, okay, there's so many problems to solve. So now coming to like your question, which is like, what's a good go-to-market plan look like? So let's say you've been working on building a product, it's a software product, a hardware product, or kind of any product. There's some fundamental things you need to do before you actually bring that product to the market. So the first thing you need to do is like, okay, hey, who's my audience? Like, who's my target audience? Like, what's the ideal persona I'm going after? For example, for Ignition, our persona is a product marketing manager in software companies, more than 200 employees, focus on software. So that's you need to define your ideal persona. And obviously that comes with a lot of user research. So you need to talk to different people and then figure out where the pain point is the highest. and also where it's like a real pain point and not a vitamin. So once you do the persona research and user research, then you're like doing a market research. Like you need to figure out, okay, who the competitors are in this market, who are the other players in the market. And the reason you need to do that is like, how do you position yourself? Because you need to position yourself in a way so that you're unique to your persona, so that you stand out in front of your persona. And once you do the positioning, then you need to message your product. Like, how do I message my product in a way where my target audience or my persona actually gets the value prop of what my product is? And then once you do all of this, this is all a part of these are all different modules in a go-to-market plan. And then once you do all of this, that's when you decide, okay, what channel mix I need to use, which is basically like, where do my target audience live? Do they live on Facebook? Do they live on Reddit? You need to use Google search? Do I need to go to conferences? Like, what are the different channels I need to use to reach my target audience? And then you design your, collateral, like assets, copywriting, whatever you need to do to go target those channels. And then finally, you basically make sure everyone is up to date in your company, and you go launch. And then you consistently track the conversion, and then keep iterating till you're happy with your whatever KPIs you set as basically whatever metrics as you set for your launch success. So all of this are different components in like a good go-to-market plan.
Okay. So what does Ignition do that's different than, say, a normal CRM like Notion or another name brand out there?
Yeah. So I think what people do today to manage their go-to-market plans it's very fragmented. Like, you would be using Notion or Google Docs to keep track of the documentation side. You might be using Asana or some kind of project management to keep track of your launch checklist. And then you might be using Dropbox or some other tool to keep all your assets. You might be using Figma for design. So there's different tools. Like, it's very fragmented. You might be using multiple tools to run this go-to-market process. The problem with that is, of course, it's all fragmented. And then once, let's say, the people change or new person joins the team, they will redo the whole process again. And all the learnings from the previous launches are lost. And you keep redoing the same mistakes because there's no like one place where you can access all your go-to-market plans. And then finally, the stakeholder management is hard. Like, if people, as I said, like when I talked about the Facebook spreadsheet, people have no idea where to find, like, hey, what campaigns are we running right now? How's the Google search ad doing? Where is the latest logo stored? It's just like all fragmented inside the org. So what Ignition does is gives you like a centralized platform and creates like a source of truth for all your go-to-market planning info. So you can create your go-to-market plan, and these are not static templates. These are like dynamic templates, meaning like we would take inputs from you, like what's your budget, what's your marketing strategy. We would get a bunch of inputs from you, and we will build a go-to-market plan for you in a dynamic way. And it's also driven by AI right now. We recently also integrated like the chat with the GPT-3 model, so it automatically figures out like a lot of the steps which you manually need to do in the traditional documentation tools, and generate these go-to-market plans for you. And then finally, I'd like to add is like, there's not like one plan. It's like basically you need to like customize the plan for different types of products, different types of markets. Also, are you doing a brand new product launch? Are you just launching a feature in your existing product? It's just like a minor release. So there's different types of go-to-market strategies for different tiers of launches, and we would build all of that for you.
Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds great. I wonder if we could sort of maybe get even a little bit more granular on this stuff. I think, as we talk to entrepreneurs and people, in our line of work, we bump into people all the time that are like, well, I'm trying to do a persona, for example. I'm trying to understand who my target audience is. And then they end up just kind of, I don't know, spazzing out and not getting anything done, right? Like basically they think about it, or maybe they can kind of make up a guy or whatever. But I don't know that a lot of people go into it knowing who exactly is their target audience. So can we start kind of at the beginning of this process of creating this go-to-market with developing a persona, and talk about, the ways that you might uncover who is your target audience, beyond just simple guessing. and then move into how you might sort of start to position or look for, a product market fit?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I can talk about our own story, like Ignition's own process to figure out who our target audience or like persona is. So when we started, for example, we were like, hey, let's target startups because they are easy to convert and they have a go-to-market issue because a lot of the startups are, for example, on the tech side of things are like engineers or PMs who don't really have much of exposure to marketing. So it would be a great sell for us. So we started talking to them and we started like first figuring out whether they have the plan, whether they have the actual pain point. And then we spoke to about 50 different product marketers and product managers across startups and also late stage companies. But we heavily started targeting startups as the first for the first time around, and then we figured out we are not a good fit because what happened there is like for them they're only like in startups, just early stage startups especially, there's only 10 to 20 people and they don't need that kind of a coordination like in a big company like Facebook. And a lot of the decisions are being done in a very ad hoc way and there's no real processes in place and there's not a huge coordination problem in place. All you need is a static template and you can get by with it. So we figured out quickly that it's more of a vitamin or nice to have, but not really a painkiller for startups. And then we started then talking to like most mid-market enterprise companies. And then they were like, oh my God, hell yeah, sign me up. I would love, I've been dying to do my launch. There's like 100 people pinging me on so many different things and I have no time to even catch up. I'm literally gasping. And they started like, then signing up. And then we're like, okay, this is our target. Basically we define our ideal customer profile. So when you define your ideal customer profile, you're talking about what kind of companies you're going after. We're like, okay, we are at least going to go after 100 to 200 people minimum, because that's when we see that this is a real pain. This is a real pain and not just like a vitamin or a nice to have. So that's how we started then, position. I mean, basically like defining our own ICP. And then once we defined our ICP, then we are like, okay, what's our persona inside these companies? We started figuring out, because there's like product marketing, there's ops, there's sometimes product managers, there's different, just actual dedicated go-to-market teams in some of the companies which do this. So then we were like, okay, it's not about a title, it's more about the function. So basically we want to figure out who is doing the product launches in all of these companies. So for the most part, we figured out it was product marketing who is doing the product launches in all of these companies. And they're like, okay, so then we're going to target them as a persona. But in a lot of the companies, it could be a brand manager. For example, in CPG companies, it's like brand manager who's doing the launches. So we would target brand management. And then in some other companies, it would be product ops. So the persona kind of varied based on the size of the company and also the industry they are in. If it's a CPG, it's a brand manager. If it's a tech, it's a product marketer. So then we need to further fine tune. So this whole process took us about at least like 6 to 9 months before we were able to like pinpoint and say, okay, this is the kind of companies we want to go after. This is the kind of personas we want to go after in those companies. And then once we knew that, then we were like, okay, now coming to the next step is like, okay, how do I message them? Right? How do we message the pain point? Like, so then we the way we did that is like, first, we made this like, let's say 10 companies use us as design partners or early stage, the first set of customers. We got them to use our product at least for a month. And then we had interviews with them and asked them, hey, tell us how exactly is this product adding value to your job, right? And then we made note of it. And then we use the exact same words for the messaging for our product. So for example, one of the biggest pain points they had was stakeholder management. It's a stakeholder communication, because when you're doing a product launch, everyone from legal, privacy, execs, marketing, product, engineering, everyone is involved. Everyone has to sign off on the launch. So one of the biggest pain points was, stakeholder management, just making sure everyone is up to date and you have one place where you can go and figure out what the status of the launch is. So then we're like, okay, let's message in a way such that, hey, do you have problems with stakeholder communication? Do you have problems keeping all your stakeholders up to date? Is your plans chaotic? Then you go use Ignition, right? So I mean, that's not exactly the messaging, but you get the point. Like that's how we figured out, okay, so you talk to all these people, ask them what problem are we solving? How has this added value to your life? And then we take that and extract those and then build the messaging.
Yeah.
So
I think,
yeah.
Let me just follow up real fast, Mike. I just wanted to ask, so, I mean, first of all, I love that you're sharing this story because it's illustrating the iterative nature of this process. I think there's a lot of pressure on small businesses and maybe startup founders to like know the answer to these things. So I love that you're talking about sort of the iterative process. I also wanted to ask, I mean, you mentioned that, maybe it isn't that important for small startups because obviously they can sort of, slop things together and get away with it. But is there any benefit starting sooner? Like, is there any benefit to installing these processes, really from the beginning? And then, I guess that's kind of it is, would there still be a benefit or is there a reason to install this process early just for sake of as your company grows, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's our long-term thesis. If you see the evolution of this product marketing as a function, for example, like even 10 years ago, for example, there was no concept of a product marketer. A product manager was a new title. And before that, it was all engineering. So this is like engineering and maybe project management. And then product manager then took shape as one of the fastest growing job functions at least in the tech industry in the last 10 years. And now we see that product marketing as a function is taking off. And the reason is like there's an explosion of tools out there because it's more and more easy. It's easier to build new software, new products, new tech. And so the big thing is like, then how do you differentiate yourself, right? Before, when you could just throw some money on Google ads and you will drive traffic to your site and you're happy with it. But now the thousands and thousands of tools, there's so much competition. The prices have increased because of all the privacy issues which Apple rolled out, for example. So even the ads are way more expensive. So then where do you differentiate? So it all comes down to, the way you message, the way you position yourself. It's become increasingly important. So I have this thing where, the distribution is at least as important as the product itself. Before it was like you build an amazing product, people will come. And I would say, no, nobody was going to come unless you figure out how to exactly message and distribute your product. So I think entrepreneurs today are more and more aware of this as a function, as something they have to invest in from the very beginning. So even Ignition's thesis is this going to change then, and we already see that where a lot of the early stage founders are like, hey, we just can't just send an email and call it a launch or just throw some money at a Facebook ad and call it a launch. We need to have like a more structured, like a go-to-market strategy and a process in order to like really differentiate and position ourselves compared to other competitors. So yeah, I think we see the market slowly changing and where this is going to become one of the important functions, even in like very early stage companies.
So let's take a step back and talk about your time at Craft.co. Initially, that product wasn't a supply chain data product. It pivoted 2 or 3 times. It wasn't those pivots based off of what you were seeing from the user data? Can you maybe talk about how you switched from one to the other and why you switched?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, that's a great story. So my previous company, Craft, so right now it's a Series B enterprise intelligence software company focused on supply chain due diligence. So basically, large manufacturing companies would hire Craft to do due diligence on their smaller suppliers. But when Craft started, we were more like a company intelligence platform, and we were in search of product market fit. So we were actually the first step. We were like, okay, let's sell to hedge funds, because why hedge funds are looking for data on companies, like for example, like jobs data, website traffic data, or employee numbers data, so they can detect the signals to help them trade. So we started selling to hedge funds. It was good because hedge funds, the sales cycle was pretty quick. So they used to buy in like 2 weeks or with less than a month. But the problem was they were really, really demanding as a client, and they used to churn a lot. And so we quickly figured out we're not going to build a long-term sustainable business with hedge funds as our target audience, right? So then we were like, okay, let's go sell to salespeople, because salespeople, they need to do some kind of a lead due diligence. They need to figure out, okay, who raised money in let's say I'm selling some healthcare product. I want to go see all the health tech companies who raised money recently, and who are growing fast, and maybe they are my good prospects. I can go sell to them. So we started targeting them, and but quickly figured out that they won't pay a lot of money. They maybe like they would pay like $50 a month or something. It's never going to be a big company. So then we were like, we got lucky that somebody from a large manufacturing and defense company came to us and said, "Hey, we would really like to use your product." And we were like, "Really? Why and how?" So and then we gave them access to our API to basically it's all it was all the data points on a company, so you could enter a company's URL, and we would give you all the details about that company, like employee financials, website, office locations. Like basically, it's like a company intelligence. And then we quickly figured out that that company was basically using us to do due diligence on the suppliers, because right now they have they have no idea, who the suppliers are, in the sense like they all when they actually hire a supplier, they just depend on their self-reporting, but they have no way to verify the supplier actually has an office in this location X, actually has a 200 employees in location Y, or and they don't get information if a key person, let's say if a CTO of the company leaves, they have no idea about that until like 18 months down the lane. There's a huge disruption in the supply chain, and they're like, oh my God, why didn't you guys tell me? So then that's why they came to Craft, because Craft could help them give those alerts to them even before they could start disrupting the supply chain. And then we're like, wow, this is an amazing, industry for us to target. And then we started talking to a lot more people in the supply chain space, and boom, we found product market fit there. And our target audience became like supply chain divisions in larger manufacturing, defense, all kinds of companies. And today it's like, it's a Series B company valued at $150 million. So yeah, you just need that iterations. You need to persevere. It's very rare that you're going to get it right at the very first time. Some companies do, but I know at least 5 companies, like in the same cohort as Craft. All of them had to like experiment rapidly from different audience, different persona, different industry, sometimes even a slight different product before they actually found the product market fit. And the ones that succeeded and ones that failed, the ones that failed were very adamant about going after a certain persona or industry and just going again and again without trying to experiment. And the one that was successful were ones which easily adapted to the user feedback and the customer feedback. They were listening and constantly iterating, and that made all the difference in the early stage of the company.
Yeah, one of the things that you've mentioned, both in this story and in your prior story, is this like sort of human interaction, right? Checking in with the people and actually hearing what they're saying. You're taking the feedback. And I think there's like an inclination nowadays with technology and everything, oh, well, we can put out a poll, or we can, send out a survey, or we can do whatever. But it sounds to me anyway, like you're actually talking to your customers, which shouldn't sound novel, but I think it kind of does in today's age. And so I wonder if you first talk a little bit about just sort of the importance of developing those relationships and taking those feedback, and when it's good and not to act on the word of a customer, for example. And then also, I don't know if there even is a magic bullet for this, but if you've got any thoughts on just sort of developing a mindset that will allow you to work in an iterative fashion. I think what you're saying is right, that, most people don't get it right the first time, but I think there's a lot of people who have pressure on themselves where it's, if I don't get this right, then I guess I'm just done.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely incredibly hard as a founder, irrespective of what type of business you're running. There is definitely, at least in the early stages of the company, I mean, it's a separate topic, but you need to really prioritize your like mental health and physical health and take time, because sometimes it could be all encompassing. But in terms of the users, there's a few things here, right? So typically when you start a company, when you start a business, you generally go to your friends and family, and you start there. But the problem is you never get an honest answer. A lot of the times your friends and family are like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We're going to root for you. go for it. I think it's going to be a huge success. But more often than not, they're just trying to help you. They're just trying to be nice to you. They're not. It's not that they don't want to be honest with you, but they just want to be very supporting of you. So you really need to actually find the real user out there who's actually going to use it and pay for your product. And then you need to talk to at least like 25 to 50 of them. You need to find out, either through your network, or you could give them Amazon gift cards, or whatever it takes to like get them on the call and actually go through this interview process. And then even during the user interview, a lot of the time, if they say yes, oh yeah, that I have a problem, I might use it. Still, don't take that as yes as an answer. They should be like, oh hell yeah, I need it. Like, when are you building it? Like, when can I put my credit card down? I want it. Like, you need to get that extreme kind of a reaction before you know that, okay, there is something here, before you're going to invest your time, money, and life in actually like building this product for that specific target audience. Because as humans, as you talked about relationships, people don't want to be rude or unpleasant. People want to be nice to you. So even if you talk to a stranger, they would be like, oh yeah, I may have a problem. Sure, I may use it. But then you build all that, invest all the time, and then finally put the product in front of them. They're like, they might log in once and they'll never show up again. And then you'll be like, hey, what happened? I just asked you. Like, you said, yeah, you had a problem, and they're like, oh, but it is a problem, but it's not as big of a problem that I actually want to pay for it right now, or they would give some other excuses. So you really need to be very careful in how you actually gauge the interest in your product. So that's like, I would say, the most important part when you're doing it. And then you at least talk to like 25 to 50 people, when you think about who your target persona is, and then get hell yeah, or I want this product. When are you building this? Some kind of a really extremely positive answers before you actually invest your time and money. That's what I would say. On the other, being able to be open to change. I think it's a little bit of an art more than a science. At the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, you still have to have a strong conviction in what you're building is going to actually, make a big impact on your users' lives. But at the same time, you should also be open for change. So on one hand, you have like the Steve Jobs of the world who are like, I don't listen to users. Users don't know what they want. I'm going to build the best product ever, and then it's going to be amazing. But that's only a very small percentage. In reality, it's like, most of the great successful products comes from like being able to iterate and listen to user feedback. And I would say it's more of for me, it's, are you ready to pay for it? Are you willing to put down your credit card for it? That's when I say, okay, it doesn't matter what you say to my face or what you tell me. It's like when I give you a product or even an MVP, even like a MVP version of the product, it's like, will you put down a credit card? Would you put down even a small, like $10 a month, whatever it is, to actually use it as a pilot? And then I know this is valuable to you. Because if you're not willing to pay for it, then I'm not going to take you seriously.
It's very true. What are some major things that people underestimate or overlook during the launch process? I know that there's, during the initial build, there's a million different things, but like there's micro launches and macro launches. Can you maybe talk about the two and what differentiates them, and maybe some personal experiences that you might have overlooked?
Yeah. For sure. I mean, to be honest, even so, when I was working at a startup and I was a product manager myself, I was like, I'm going to just build the best product and people are going to use it anyway. Like, I don't have to worry about, marketing and messaging as much. But I was wrong, and I learned that the hard way. A lot of the times, I think there's just this inherent kind of attitude where you just say, I'm just going to email a bunch of people and say this new product is out, and they're going to like start using it. But that's not a launch. Sending an email is not a launch. You need to have like almost like a multi-prong approach to your go-to-market. You need to make sure that your user sees your messaging in multiple channels, through email, through social media, maybe on Reddit or wherever they hang. That they need to keep seeing that again and again. And also the message has to resonate. For example, let's say you're building a project management tool. I'm just taking a random example here. And project management tool, there's Asana, there's Monday, there's ClickUp, there's like a million project management tools, like a task management tools out there. If you want to build a new one, you should be like, hey, how do I really position this? And the only way you're going to do that is by going and asking your customers that, okay, like how can I differentiate myself? And let's say you're building a specific project management tool for healthcare companies, right? So, and that's a specific vertical. So what you're doing is, let's say you're building a verticalized project management tool, which is specifically for healthcare or pharmacy companies where they have like FDA trials or multiple phases. It's like, and then you kind of customize your product and you customize your project management tool for that healthcare. And then all the messaging is towards, hey, pharma companies, I know your problem is going to all these FDA trials with multiple phases. And here is this cool new app, a project management tool, which is going to solve your problem. And then you go with this kind of a message, and that's how you position yourself. And then, pharma companies, let's say they don't live on Facebook or LinkedIn. Probably, maybe you need to go to some conferences, maybe you need to get through your connections. So then you use those channels and then see if you can do those outreaches. And you run like an enterprise sales cycle, which is like very, very different from a product-led growth where you have a individual user come in and put down their credit card. So you figure out your sales motion or product-led motion. So there's so many different steps involved in actually figuring out your go-to-market motion. And a lot of the companies they get this wrong. They just either don't do this or they miss one of the steps. They forget about actually figuring out what the right messaging is, or they forget about positioning. Positioning is one of the like, truly as an entrepreneur, positioning is so important. Like we have seen, just by changing the positioning, the product starts selling like a hotcake. I've seen companies just by appealing to positioning in a way which really resonates with the user. I mean, the way we did that, just to go a little bit more granular, is like, you almost build a word cloud. You go to each of the competitors' website, you take their whatever tagline or the headline they have on their website, you get all of them together and build a word cloud, and then see where you can position yourself, right? What's missing? Like you have, and then you figure out, okay, this is missing. Maybe like reliability and security is missing. Maybe you want to be the most secure project management company in the world, and then you like start positioning on security as an aspect. And then you go after regulated companies, because for regulated companies, security is key. And then you position yourself as the most secure project management company, and then your target audience becomes all these regulated companies. And then you can just by just changing you haven't changed the product at all. Just by changing the positioning, then boom, you're going to start selling like hotcakes. So these are some of the mistakes which I've seen companies do. They just get frustrated that product is not selling, nobody's using it. A lot of it comes down to just like making sure, are you messaging it correctly, so that are the users understanding the value prop? Are you positioning yourself with respect to the other competitors in the industry?
Yeah, no, I think that's super helpful. Yeah. I wonder if we could shift a little bit and talk a little bit about sort of fundraising as part of our growth. And, as it relates to all this stuff, I wonder if we can talk about how like venture capital might affect the product development or product growth process. And I think in my mind, this is sort of now we have an outside voice, we have an outside contributor, somebody's interested in giving input or feedback on the product we're developing. So how does that affect our product growth or our company growth? But maybe you see it differently. I just wonder if you could sort of talk about, the role that venture plays in product development.
Yeah. So, you can have a successful company without being venture backed. It really depends on what kind of a company you're looking to build and what's your vision. At the end of the day, like if you think your company can scale a lot, like you can grow. The typical venture model I heard is this framework called 3-3-3-2-2, which you start with 1 million in revenues for the first year, then you go to 3, 9, 27. 3 million in ARR, 9 million in ARR, 27 million ARR, and then 2, which is double. So you're almost like 50 million and 100 million. So by the time you reach 100 million in ARR, you're $1 billion company. So do you have a product and a business model which you can scale in the next 5 years to become $1 billion company? Right? If yes, and if you believe in that potential, then go take venture money, because that's what venture capitalists are looking for. A lot of the times when venture capitalists invest, let's say they have $100 million fund, they invest in like, whatever, 20 companies, and they know that like 15 plus companies are going to fail or not going to do as well. So they just need this 5 companies or 3 companies to like really hit it out of the park. So overall, they can return 2 times to 3 times the fund. So they can return 200 million or 300 million to the LPs who invest in the fund, right? So they're looking for companies which can scale from 3 million in revenue to 100 million in revenue in 5 years and go to $1 billion company. So that's when you're like, okay, I do believe that my product has a potential. We are growing fast, and our target market is huge. It's not like a niche product. It's actually a huge market. So we have all the ingredients required for us to become $1 billion company. So then I need the money because to hire resources, to spend in marketing, to build my sales team and build my engineering team. That's when you go take venture capital, and then you go execute. But at the same time, I see a lot more successful companies by bootstrapping, by not taking as much venture capital, and then maybe even going after a very niche market. Like, I know a company which created a software for all the fitness like gyms in our locality, and they're doing well. I mean, they're making a couple of million in revenue, but they don't have any outside investors, so it's all of that is there. So it's like so many different ways, because when you start taking venture capital, you also gonna start liquid. I mean, basically start get diluted in your own ownership. Every new round, you almost get into this treadmill where you need to raise a seed round. Seed round are typically like $3 to $5 million and like on a $20 million valuation, and then you go to Series A, which is at 40 million, then Series B, which is 100 to 150. So, but every time your own ownership is getting diluted, and you start getting new board members on your company, and they have going to have a say in how you run the company. So there's all of these other additional things which could actually create bottlenecks. On the other hand, if you have a rocket ship which is going to like scale, then all that capital is going to really help you invest in marketing, sales, engineering. What is required to actually get you to that 100 million in revenues? So you really need, as an entrepreneur, the first step is you really need to decide whether you actually want to go the venture route, or you want to build more of a sustainable bootstrap business more for the longer term.
So as someone who would prefer the latter, to go the bootstrap route, like myself, I'm in the process of trying to develop a SaaS app for people in the event industry, and it's very hard to do it on your own. Do you need the team? I mean, like, I don't think that I could do it myself. I've been working on it for years, and I'm trying to teach myself how to pretty much do everything, but I don't, without taking out outside money.
Yeah.
I can't afford to pay a team of people to help. So it's kind of like you're in this catch-22. You have a great idea, but can't really deliver it by yourself. Do you have any input for someone like me?
Yeah. So for sure. I mean, I was talking more about like venture fund money, like institutional capital, but a lot of the times people just do an angel round, like friends and family round, and they raise like 100 to 200K, right? So if you can get a bunch of 5K, 10K checks from like some 20 to 30 people who are your friends and family, or who are some of the high network individuals in your network, and then raise that, and that's still considered bootstrap, because you can use that to develop your product and then go to market. In fact, a great example is like there's a site called acquire.com. You can see so many of the SaaS companies which were bootstrapped but still raised some money, but built like companies which are generating 500,000 in revenue, 1 million in revenue, and they sell it for like 5 million. I sell it for 3 million, like on that. And then there's so many, it's almost like a really active marketplace for people buying and selling companies. So there are a lot of people who are doing it out there. But yeah, you're completely right. It's impossible to do it with like zero cash. You definitely need either you need to put in your own money, or maybe you do a friends and family round in your own network and raise just enough money to build your product. If you're building a software product, I'm guessing that's at least going to take you 100 to 200K in you need to do the designs, you need to then build it, and you need to make it robust and like high available in order to like actually get the actual users to use it. So I would say you would do a friends and family round, or put in your own money, and then see if you can grow it even to a few 100K in revenue on your own. And then there's no time pressure. There's no board member. There's nobody like really like knocking on your door. So you can do it at your own pace and build your own company. And that it's almost like a lifestyle business as well.
Yeah, that's kind of the route I want to go down. Is I don't like the thought of having a bunch of overlords telling me how to run a business that I started, and so I kind of want to keep it all in house. It's just how much do I want to do myself? So, project managing is a kind of a newer field. Like you mentioned earlier, the role hasn't been there for that long. As a project manager, what are some soft skills that you need to be good at? What are some other so like what are some key things that you have to do as a project manager to be successful? Have to be highly organized, have to have soft skills, you got to work with stakeholders, so on and so forth. Tell us about the other side of the project management job.
Yeah, the trickiest part of project management or even product management or product marketing is like you have so many stakeholders pinging you all the time, and you can't keep everyone happy.
Yeah.
So you are going to end up saying no to someone. You are going to end up disappointing someone, and that shouldn't be the loudest voice in the room. That shouldn't be based on, oh, my boss is saying it, I need to do it, or this salesperson has been bugging me so much that I'm just going to do it. You should have like a more of a very transparent prioritization process where everyone can see and understand why you're prioritizing certain things over others, because I think that's the number one soft skill required. It's like stakeholder management. Obviously a huge part of it is just being able to communicate better, being able to like also just empathize better with people, being able to communicate in a very diplomatic way. So instead of saying no, you're just like, oh yeah, I know it's important, but these are based on our company strategy, these are the most higher priorities for this quarter. So maybe we'll consider it in the next quarter, instead of saying, hey, no, it's not going to happen. Like, it's all about how you message it again. It's all about how you communicate it. And also more importantly, it's having this very transparent, like a process, which everyone can see and access. It's just very clearly outlines, okay, these are our company strategy, these are our company priorities for this quarter, coming directly from the CEO on the board, and this is our team's priorities, and these are our customer priorities. So I need to balance all of these, and based off this is why I have this project plan laid out, and we have only these resources and this budget. So in order to make sure we can meet our goals, then I need to allocate it in this way. So unfortunately, probably we cannot get to your request this quarter, but maybe next quarter. So that's the most important part, having like a very clear and a transparent prioritization process, outlining what the KPIs are, what the metrics are, what the priorities for the company, team, and also your customers are. So then it becomes, the whole stakeholder management gets much easier, because people understand that you're just trying to do your job. But if you don't have that, people are like, oh my God, you're probably doing this as a favor for the other person, and you just don't like me. All kinds of wrong misconceptions come into play, and that will lead to a disaster. So it's just how you keep a very transparent project plan in place.
Yeah, well, it's
I'm
such
sure
an interesting.
that
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm sure that the transparency actually helps you manage the stress level as well, because you're not having to play, answer his question, back and forth, and keep everyone happy. By being transparent with it, it keeps the stress levels down as well.
Exactly. And you can just point anyone to that process, or your dog, saying, hey, look, this is the prioritization process. It's not you. That's the priorities. That's what I've been told are the priorities. I'm doing my job. So yeah, 100%. That makes your life so much easier.
Yeah. Well, and I just wanted to add to that too, that I think, the role of the product manager is probably, and maybe it's developed enough now after these maybe 5 or 10 years that it's grown in popularity, but it seems like what you might look for in an applicant for that position probably varies quite a bit, right? Because there's some technical knowledge that you need to have. There's project management type knowledge that you need to have. You need to have some marketing chops. You need to have all these things, right? So I'm not sure that there's any one person that does this job, right? Like, it seems like if you're in a small startup, you could grow into that position, right, by being intimately familiar with the property or the product and learning some stuff about marketing and things like that. But bringing people in who are already doing this job, it seems like it could be really challenging to hire for that position.
Yeah, you're completely right. That's a great point. And also, like, this role varies so widely between a large company like Google or Facebook, and then small startup. Because at a small startup, you're almost like a Swiss knife. You're doing a million things on your own. You're figuring out, you're running your data analytics. You're talking to your users. You're coming up with a roadmap. You're talking to the engineers. You're doing a product launch. You're doing all of this yourself. In a large company, you have a dedicated design team, a data science team. Like, you have all these teams who are your resources. So there you're like a mission control. We're just pulling all these levers and then aligning the stakeholders and priorities and just getting them together and packaging them and then messaging them. So the skills are so widely different, depending on the size of the company. So and I always joke, like, just because you've been a very successful product manager at Google doesn't automatically going to make you an amazing entrepreneur, because the skills are very different. And then, but the former can be true, where if you're an entrepreneur before, if you've already juggled a million things, then the probability that you're going to be successful in a large company is actually higher, because you know how to manage different stakeholders, different functions, all this. You know how to manage stress level. You know to handle uncertainties. So yeah, it's basically like, if I were to go higher, I would actually look for people who have had their own businesses or who worked in a role which required them to, like, multitask and handle multiple priorities at once.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, and I mean, I guess you could see that there's like a range of characteristics that make a great product manager, but right, I think to your point, it's, there is no one size fits all approach to this, right? It's you've got to find people who are adaptable and able to do this stuff. So I think that's really interesting. I want to move now into another question about sort of product growth and developing your startup, growing your company. And just how do you keep up with innovation? So talking about just sort of what's happening in the world technology wise, we've got Web3, we've got AI, we've got all these new technologies that are emerging right now. Like, at what point do we start making decisions that we need to integrate that into our software platform, for example, or how do we keep an eye out for what's next?
That's a great question. It's also very timely because just yesterday the GPT-4 was introduced by OpenAI, which is amazing. So I myself am playing with it and looking to see how I can integrate that into Ignition, for example. So I think it all comes down to, can that solve the problem you're solving for your customers better? Like, if I integrate this new technology in my product, will it help me, make the whole go-to-market plan creation faster, better? Can I automate persona generation? Can I automate like a battle card creation for our customers, right? So I think it comes down to, like, it's not about using technology for the sake of technology. So I see like thousands of AI startups coming up saying, we do this .ai, that .ai, like every combination of words with .ai at the end. But the problem is, like, nobody wants an AI company. At the end of the day, I don't care what tools you're using. It's like, are you solving my problem? Like, I have this problem. Are you solving my problem? So the companies that are really going to succeed is like, who are working on existing pain points, real problems which enterprises and businesses have or consumers have, and then leveraging these technologies, whether it's AI or something else, to help solve the problem in a better way, more automated fashion, and make it even more smoother and easier for the customers to actually, like, feel that the problem is being solved. So I think that's the lens through which you look at these technologies. Like, I'm already doing something. I have an existing platform, existing company, whatever industry you're in. It's like, by integrating this technology, are there ways I could then, potentially make my solution 10x better?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that there is a real propensity, especially in young startup companies especially software companies, to sort of grab onto every little piece of tech that's coming along. And, you've talked quite a bit about like project management software. I run a marketing agency. And so we've been through every iteration of project management software, looking for one that would do what we wanted it to do. Right. And it's interesting as you see these software platforms grow and change, you see them grabbing onto these little technologies, it's like, oh, okay, well, now you can put your project on the blockchain, or something. And it's like, do I need that? Like, who's looking for that?
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting, the point that you make just about sort of, making sure that you're looking through the appropriate lens, because I think so many people are quick to adopt, for the sake of trying to be ahead or trying to, seem innovative or something. But the reality is, if it doesn't actually improve your product, then why bother?
Yeah, and if
Exactly.
it actually makes more work for you in the process, I mean, like some of the CRMs that I've used in the past, it's almost like keeping the CRM up to date is more work than it was in the first place. So why bother doing it? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's a catch-22 in everything.
No, yeah, exactly. Like I know the joke here is like I saw a VC. This person was a SaaS VC on his LinkedIn profile, and then a couple of years later he changed it to Web3 VC, and today he's an AI VC. I'm like, come on! So you don't have a thesis. You're just going to go after the hardest thing. So that's what sometimes founders do. They just chase after what is new in the market, but like that doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. Companies building is so hard. And you're not going to do anybody any favor by just chasing after and creating a solution and then looking for a problem, a persona, all the things we talked before in this podcast. Is like you have already identified a problem, you identified a persona. Then the question is like, can you use this AI or any tech to solve this problem better? So that's the way you need to look at it.
Yeah. Well, we're about at that time. Can you tell people where they can reach out to find out more about you and your company?
Sure. Yeah. So the company's name, it's Ignition, and the website is haveignition.com. It's just HAVEIGNITION.com. And you can also connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. My handle is my first name, last name. It's Karthik Suresh on Twitter. On LinkedIn, it's Karthik Suresh LBS. So feel free to connect with me, ping me. Happy to answer any questions, and also would love to connect and get any feedback on Ignition.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Karthik. This has been awesome and really insightful. I think, this startup world is, I think, so confusing for a lot of people. And the way that we start businesses now is so different for many people than, the way that their parents or their parents' generation did it. And so I think it's really interesting to gain the insights of somebody who has the kind of experience as you. So thank you for taking the time to do this.
Of course. Yeah, I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. We do it anytime. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.